and for my oral presentation, I want to talk about a play I viewed called Chinglish, written by David Henry Wong. Chinglish is a story about an American businessman who travels to China for an opportunity to grow business. He's aware of the huge economic growth going on in China, and he simply wants to take advantage of that. Um, but throughout this play, David Henry Wong does such a great job in proving the difficulties different cultures have through, language and culture. It's very hard to understand and come to one agreement. And it's basically is about translation, hence Chinglish. It is based in China, and Daniel, going to China, had to find a translator and a consultant. Sadly, the consultant, which is named Peter, was actually a professor from many years living in China. Of course, Daniel didn't know that since he's, hasn't built that relationship with Peter. Which brings me, I forgot, Peter mentions to Daniel the importance of guaxing, guaxing, I'm pretty sure, I'm sorry, guaxing, I don't know if I'm saying it right, which means relationship. And he emphasized the importance of relationship in China. He was assuring Daniel that if you really want this business, you really have to build a huge relationship. And it doesn't mean just wine and dine the minister. It means really getting to know him and constantly seeing him, which, he convinced Daniel to stay longer there. But through this play, you can see, the struggles Daniel is having, understanding what's going on, which, only rises issues, but also through this, he actually finds truth. And I'm going to again quote the University of Michigan. Daniel learns that there's much to be lost and found in translation. And this is, it is a comedy, but, there's also drama and romance. And the romance is by between Daniel and Shi Yang, which is the vice minister of under the minister Kai of this organization, a cultural organization. And Daniel brings a great point on, going to him for business, because there's actually a big issue going on with signs in China being misinterpreted, mistranslated. It's funny, in the beginning of the play, Daniel gives an example of symbols, which are, there's thousands of symbols in China compared to, our American westernized language. China has a huge variety, so it's very delicate, and it could be easy to mess up, which is what was going on in China. These translations were completely wrong and just offensive. And Daniel gives an example of a symbol of dog and, oh no, dry, I'm sorry, dry, and then to do. And then they both come together. Someone put, in a sign, puts them together. And it's, the comical side of it. To do is slang for, to do someone. And if you put dry together, it's just, really bad mistranslation of it. But basically, that's what he is assuring the minister, is that he can he can find ways, and he knows how to give him a proper translation through signs in China, and X all these wrong translations going on. And it's funny because Daniel has Peter as his translator when he's speaking to Kai the minister, and Kai the minister has his own translator. And Peter says everybody has to have their own translator. I don't really understand why they can't just use one translator, but it's really funny because the prime minister's translators always get the translation wrong. So anything he's trying to cross over to Daniel was getting completely messed up and just wrong. Everything was just wrong. Yet the Peter, who was being a fraud, saying he's a consultant, actually was, who is a professor, so he knew all the translations, was actually passing over the right translations. And that's where the comedy comes from, all these translations and, but I also want to talk about the play and the actors. It's just great that the University of Michigan used proper actors for their roles. They actually knew fluent Chinese. And yes, this play does really surround itself with Chinese. A lot of the our actors do speak Chinese. Daniel and Peter are the only ones that are kind of fluent in English and in the Western. And but Shi Yang is where that relationship between Daniel, switching up a little bit, Shi Yang does know a little English, but just very, very minimal. So she actually pairs up with Daniel to stop this corruption that is actually going behind scenes. And there's just there's basically corruption going on with Kai the minister and Peter, and the only one that knows about it is Shi Yang. And it took them a long time to come to this conclusion, but they ended up even falling in love. And this brings me to me comparing Chinglish through the love and the culture and the understanding of it with a play that we also read about, which is called A Golden Child, also written by David Henry Wong. And it reminds me because Shi Yang kind of reminded me of the first wife of the king. Shi Yang, which is from Chinglish, tells Daniel that he's basically an escape from this life she lives of constant, it's such the same routine. And there's no love, but there is respect. And Daniel doesn't understand that because where he's from, love is love, and you come to an agreement. There's no, Daniel was, ready to risk it all, ready to leave his wife. But Shi Yang said, you know what? If you leave your wife, that means you don't respect her. And if you're willing to tell her about our affair, that definitely means you don't respect her. But it reminds me of Golden Child because the first wife and Golden Child, there may not have been love because they were very, distant. And of course, the king actually really loved the third wife, or the second wife, or third wife. Sorry, I think it's the third wife. But the relationship between first wife and the king was very distant. But she still felt like it was her duty to honor him. Despite the lack of love, it was just the duty. And Shi Yang explains that as well. Sure, there may not be love, but it's just all about respect and honor. Now, but the second play I want to compare this with is called Our Enemies. And the reason I want to compare it to Our Enemies is because Noor in Our Enemies explains to Mohsen how, she also wants to escape. And it also seems as if she uses Mohsen as an escape from certain situations she's living, which she doesn't want to open up about. But I can, make it a little obvious through how she is and how her relationship with Mohsen was. And compare it to the first wife of Golden Child, and Shi Yang from Chinglish. Um, these women um, honor who they are, honor the respect, the honor, their purpose, um, and they don't really let the men decide for them. Like Shi Yang said, if you're gonna leave your wife, then I know you don't respect me. If you don't respect your wife, Noor understood that Mohsen was basically just a fling and an escape, and but she knew that there was differences between them. Just like first wife, she only viewed the king as her, her king, and she had a duty to him as first wife, and it's just in their culture, um, and it's what would please their ancestors. So for me, um, comparing all of these is just amazing how the differences between cultures, it's just such a struggle to all come to an understanding because the differences in their language, their culture, as I mentioned before, but yet there is this small window of, you know, um, understanding through all of this. And again, I really like this quote by the University of Michigan about Chinglish, which is, um, there's much to be lost and found in translation. So thank you.